Hey parents, I have another video for you, and this one is on kindergarten phonics, helping your student at home. My hope is that this video will help you help your child learn to read with our phonics program. We use Abeka curriculum, which is a wonderful Christian-based curriculum. It's been around for many, many years. In fact, there are parents of some of our students who learned with Abeka Phonics, and it is great because there's been a lot of talk lately from teachers about using the science of reading as though it were a new thing, and the world has moved back, the United States, most of the world, I think, has moved back to phonics. But Abeka never left. Abeka has been a systematic phonics program that explicitly teaches children how to read. So let's get started and talk a little bit about phonics. First of all, the National Reading Panel is an organization out of the NIH that was convened by Congress in 1997, and they did their final report in 2000. And what they did is they looked at heaps and heaps of research that have been done over the past 30 years on brain science and neuroscience and science and classroom teaching, and they found what were the best ways to instruct children to learn how to read. And they used these 5 pillars as their framework. They did 6. There was some computer-based information, but we mostly focus on these 5 pillars: phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. These are all skills that are necessary for a student to learn how to read. And the purpose of reading is really to learn, to enjoy, to get something out of your reading. So vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension are very important in there. I do teach all of these in the classroom, but right now I'm just going to focus on this phonics piece with you. What is phonics? Phonics instruction is really the connection between the spoken language and the written language. So phonics has to do a little bit with sound and the sounds that your child hears, but also what is that letter and what does it look like and what does it say? So it is print to speech or speech to print is what phonics instruction is all about. And our Abeka Phonics instruction has 6 steps that we go through throughout the kindergarten year to teach your child to learn to read. I'm going to cover the first 4 with you. The 5 and 6 are really after Christmas, and I'm going to cover those at a different time because this is a lot to take in. So step 1 is to learn and recognize the short vowels and their sounds. There are 5 vowels. They say 2 sounds each. But before Christmas, we only focus on the short sounds. So I will tell you a little bit about how we teach it and what those sounds say. We use a visual so that the children can learn, like apple, inchworm, elephant. Those visuals really help your child recall the sounds because repetition is key in learning sounds. And we do these every day. We just do drills of letters and what they say. So your child may have already shown you some of those. And then we do the sound. We connect it also with what the mouth does when you make that sound. And I connect it too with what your throat does. So the children can have a full understanding. It just helps them remember it too, of what they need to do. Now the vowel sounds are very close together, some of them. So these are tricky and I'm spending a lot of time on these. First thing to know about vowel sounds is that they're all voiced. That means that your throat right here, if you put your finger on it, it vibrates when you say your vowel sounds. There are consonants that are voiced and some that are not voiced. So I'll give you an example. Ah, if you say ah, that is voiced. But if you say p, p, p for P, that doesn't make your throat vibrate. So the kids feel their throat as they go through all of the vowels, but all the short vowels sounds are voiced. And I have little cards that go along with the each letter. It shows if it's voiced. So L is voiced. It says L, and it shows what their mouth does too, because what your mouth does is really important. It helps the children form the sounds correctly. So A says ah in apple. A says ah, ah, ah. E says eh in elephant. E says eh, eh, eh. And I point to my mouth so that they know what your mouth is supposed to do. I says I in inchworm. I says I, I, I. O says oh, ah in ostrich. O says ah, ah, ah. Or ah, ah, ah. Sorry. U says in umbrella. U says ah, ah, ah. So each of the sounds, except for ostrich, because it's hard to act on an ostrich while you're sitting in your chair. So I just show them that their mouth goes ah when they say ostrich. So those are the vowel sounds, and those are what they say. The consonants get a little bit tricky. Some are voiced, some are not. But this is the order in which we do the consonants. We start with T, we go to L and B and N and M, etc. And we have movements for all of them. The important thing about consonants that I work on with the students, and you can work on at home too, is to make sure that you don't add a vowel to the consonant. And I'll show you what I mean. T says T in table. It doesn't say ta. That's T-U. T says T. L says L. L. And you can see I show them where their tongue is. And L. It doesn't say la. B says B. That's a hard one not to add a vowel to. B. N, m, those are easier. Sk, d, g. X is x. So R is r, not ra. F is f. And you have to say the pure sound. I think some of the other ones are P. P, not p. P. So they have to blow air out of their mouth. So the consonants we go over, we're just on B right now. We did all the vowels. Now we're working through the consonants. And if they know their consonants, maybe they were here last year and they did the Abeka in K4, then the other thing, the exercise that we do, and I don't have it, it's on my board, but I draw pictures, and it gives them a good laugh, of all the things they can think of that start with the letter. So the letter A, the letter T, the letter L. But those students who already know those beginning sounds or might be a little bit more advanced, I'll challenge them to think of other places in the word where the letter is. So ball for L, for example, instead of lamp or light, because it's harder to hear the sounds in the middle and at the end of a word. And so I can scaffold a little bit and help those students who might already know their letters by thinking about those sounds at the end. So step 3 is then learning how to blend. And we've already started this because we finished our vowels and we've done 2 or 3 consonants. And so now they can start to put 2 sounds together. And this is critical as they start to later decode 3-letter words to be able to blend the first 2 letters that are in the word. So for example, you can see some of the charts that we use on this side. And I also use little flashcards and we go through and do drills with those. But sa, se, si, sa, sa. And then we'll talk a little bit about how sa is in the word sat and se is in the word set. So they understand that they're forming a word. Many schools will use the ending sound like at, and they'll think of all the at words, or it and all the it words. We use the beginning because if you use the ending, you limit yourself. If you use the beginning, you can make many more words out of the beginning sound. But I teach them how to turn on their motor and say sa, sat, and then we add a T to it. So they're learning their blends. And then the next thing that we roll into is the 1-vowel rule. So that's sounding out what we call CVC words, which are consonant, vowel, consonant words. 3 letters usually, sometimes 4 once we've taught things like SH. But then we start to sound out those words. And typically, when a word has 1 vowel, the vowel is usually short. And it has a smiley face over it. We haven't gotten there yet, but we will soon. That's how you mark the short vowel. Because once we learn our long vowels, those have a line over them, and we'll start to distinguish whether or not it has 1 vowel or 2 vowels, and therefore, what does the vowel say if it has 1 or 2? So, for example, a says a in cat, says in shut, and says in pot, because those only have 1 vowel. So we'll go down and we'll practice blending 3 sounds together. They already know b, then we add the b, bib. And that comes right around, I want to say November-ish. I want to talk about a couple of other things that I get lots of questions on. Sight words. So your child may have gone to a school, or their sibling may have, where they memorized a lot of sight words. Actually, most words can be sounded out using phonics rules. There are 20 words that you see here that are the most frequently used words in the English language. So we could call those high frequency words. I do want the children to learn those, but only 9 of them don't fall into the phonics rules, and they're in green. So for example, the, E doesn't say So that's an exception. They have to learn that. Of, O doesn't say either, and to, O doesn't say oo. There are some words like and doesn't have to be memorized, because once they learn a, n, d, then they can sound that out. Same with in, is, it, that. Once they learn that th says th, then they know at, and they can sound that out. So they don't need to memorize those words. That's actually not how the brain works when it learns to read. It doesn't memorize a whole bunch of words. You can memorize some, but the brain doesn't have the capacity to memorize every single word. When you read, you actually have not memorized every single word. You've memorized, your brain has memorized sort of strings of letters together. Which leads me to my next thing, right about reversals. So I get a lot of questions about this in phonics too when we're learning how to write. And many times kids will get B and D and P mixed up. They'll say the wrong sound, or they'll write the wrong letter, W and M, U and N, and then numbers backwards all the time. So we do a lot of writing, back to my handwriting video, but in learning the letter sounds, so when we learn B tomorrow, we're going to really talk about the direction that B faces, because D is the opposite. Little d and capital D face together, whereas big B and lowercase b face the same way. And the reason that we spend a lot of time on that is because, without getting into the real nitty-gritty, now you see a picture of your brain. When the brain learns to read, it actually sees a letter in this blue part right here, the occipital lobe, and that is where the eyeballs see the letter. And then it moves into this red area, which has been dubbed the brain's letterbox by a scientist who's really interesting. If you love this stuff, go on YouTube and find, I think his name is Stanley Dehane. But some interesting research has been done more recently with MRI imaging about what happens in the brain when somebody reads a word or a letter. This red area was not meant for letters and words, because print is new-ish, in the whole scheme of the world since God created it until now. They haven't always been reading print and letters. But the alphabetic letters that children learn, they get stored in this little red area. But this red area is actually for objects, so faces and objects. So for example, if you see a triangle, you know that a triangle is a triangle if it's facing this way or upside down, if I can show you. My face is me if I'm facing this way or this way. So this little red area allows for mirror images. Now it complicates things when letters get thrown in that little area, because now they see a B and to them it's a P or a D. It doesn't really matter, because that's how faces and objects are. So really repetition and writing and really working with letters a lot and numbers a lot will help your child to learn those. Reversals are common through the second grade, so I would not worry. They don't have dyslexia or anything like that. It's very common, but I do work really hard to help them be able to distinguish the two. So that is everything on phonics right now. If you have any questions, please let me know, but I do hope that this helped. Have a great one. Bye-bye.